Do you think that security or fears about data protection are the main drawbacks indeed for people getting into the cloud or for public services getting into the cloud?
Yes, it's for agencies. It's clear they are obliged to take into account all regulations, and I see also small and medium-sized companies, and we get the feedback from them that they look for orientation and they look for the right way to make not mistakes, because they fear to hand over processes and data, and at the end it doesn't work, and they cannot hold them back. And that's a problem also for small and medium-sized companies.
Do all panelists share this opinion?
Partially.
I would say partially, in a way that, yeah, security and privacy are definitely the perceived barrier. To me, the main barrier is perhaps the lack of understanding and resistance to change of the market, rather than security and privacy. Those are good excuses not to move.
Maybe I would like to refer to a study we launched end of last year, which was conducted with the University of Aschaffenburg about the acceptance of risks in other branches, not in cloud, in other branches, in the finance sector, in the automotive sector, and what it means. And there was a very interesting learning. The learning was that security is not really the showstopper. It is more the confidence in the company providing and in the image of the company. That was a very interesting learning. This study is available on our website as well. And there is another point with it. When we talk about security, especially when it comes to smaller companies, then it is not related to the classification of data. Customers quite often demand or request security, but if you ask what type of data do you have to be secure, they can't answer. So they may have public data on their website, which are public anyhow, so there is no need for saving them. But others are, let's say, company internal or even more specific, their crown jewels, and they need to get them secured differently. And this type of classification, which is given in all large companies, of course, is not that strong given in the small media area. And that is a matter of education at the end. Yeah.
Yes.
I will second that, and but also there are other issues than security, and security, just to finish on what you were saying, it's not maybe an issue of classification of data, but the issue of risk analysis, really. What kind of data in what processes are you using, and for what, and what are the consequences? So it's as simple as that. And then you have to assess whether this or that kind of cloud will match your requirements. But there is one issue that is, I think, as big as that, and that is concerns about vendor lock-in, which is not really a security concern, but it's a very big concern.
The lock-in.
And that also affects trust. And as you say, the trust in a vendor, of course, it will be enhanced by if the vendor is certified against international standard. There's no doubt of that. But as you said, that might be a costly proposition, especially for smaller providers. But the track record, the openness, transparency, not only in terms of what you are doing, but also what are the terms for having your data and getting them out again, is very critical.
So not all data is created equal, so to say.
No.
And there must be a risk assessment. One question also is how secure can you get the data? Let's assume that I'm working with a lot of really very personal information, and I need a very high standard of security. How secure can I get this in the cloud? And really consider that we have not just the hacker at home that is trying to get my data, but there are, as we have learned, there are big organizations that are really trying to hack into the cloud and into the networks that are connecting to clouds. So how secure can you get the data? Mr. Helmbrecht, maybe?
I'm not sure if this is the right question, because if you look at it, then you have data, and then the question is, what value does this data have for you? And I think the difference is that all this business model where cloud computing started, and if you look at, let's say, YouTube, Facebook, Amazon, Google, all these things, it's really boosted by private users. And those people don't make a risk assessment, don't think about it. They have a complete other understanding of trust than we have in a professional world. So the question is then, take somebody who puts his blood pressure every morning he has with a device in the cloud. Yeah? So I think this citizen does not think about that his healthcare data is in the cloud. And if it's now, let's say, legally forbidden in Germany to have healthcare data outside German jurisdiction, nobody cares about this. Yeah? Nobody goes to court for this, and nobody tells them what you are doing, you should not do it for your privacy, whatever. So I think that the big problem is that you have these different perspectives of private users, let's say, who generally don't care, and business users who, in some cases,
and public service institutions.
Yeah, but public service institutions, it's like governments or agencies have to do it by law. Yeah, we are trained to do this. There's another framework. If you have a finance sector, you have reporting schemes, you have a control mechanism, you have then authorities who supervise the sector. But you have other sectors where there's no supervision. Yeah? If you have games, television,
how
media,
secure are the data in the cloud?
Yeah, you don't have a...
I'm a public service institution. I have to follow all the laws, all the rules.
We don't have a scale for this. We don't say this is secure, this is more secure. What we do is that we have, let's say, a classification scheme in the public authority where you say it's top secret, it's secret, you have regimes. And there you have something where you value. But a lot of companies, this is what we tried in the past with awareness, a lot of companies don't think about this. Yeah? So they don't do this risk assessment. And if you don't do it, you don't have a scale, and how will you judge them on this?
So, yeah.
Just a small comment on the citizens versus agencies. I agree that agencies and bigger enterprises will have to have compliance by law as a main concern. And they do, and they have, and that will affect their position on applying cloud computing. But concerning citizens, I think they actually do a risk assessment, and they think about security, but not in the same way as companies. They do not care about legal compliance, that's true. But they will care very much if their data got lost. I do. For example, if I'm using all my family pictures since 20 years or something, which are digitized somewhere, I would consider very carefully putting them in a Dropbox if Dropbox doesn't really guarantee that they will be there in 20 years in the same condition. So we do risk assessment, but on another level, and the other concerns.
Mr. Hanke, would you advise a public service institution to put data, top secret data or whatever category in the cloud?
I would not start with top secret data. I would start with data not on such a security level. But yes, regarding the public services, it is so that the agency are taking into account regulations. And not only data protection, but also stronger regulations. And that means that they must develop security concepts. They must also assess their data, and then they can decide if it is possible. And cloud computing services are different. I would not recommend to do such data in a public cloud, but a concentration of data in the federal government also means to establish something like a private cloud.
So a mixed cloud or public cloud?
No, I think we will start with a private cloud, with a federal government cloud, also according to the standards of what are the standards also in the business sector. But here it's a better control what happens, and it's better control also to improve some problems which are caused by in the first step.
So we've learned or we've heard a lot that US providers are losing trust at the moment, and this is really big business. There are some statistics that put the potential costs from the NSA spying for US providers to $35 billion a year by 2016, just for the cloud services. So how could we exploit in Europe? How could European provider exploit this as an opportunity and to offer different, more trusted services? How could there be established a kind of a gold standard for trust in Europe? Whoever wants to go for that.
I must come back. I don't think it's a topic of trust. Because if you look into it, it's not trust what we are discussing in the end. It looks like with the Snowden NSA that we look about confidentially. But if you look behind it, we are talking about competition. And competition is that what should be on the top. If you look at it, what cloud computing is for these American companies, it's a business model for monetizing private data. And this is a new business model, what we don't like in Europe. This is one point. If you look at all the things what we discuss about e-privacy directive, if you look into Germany, what the data protection authorities do, it's something where we say, from our understanding, it should be either transparent or we should know if our data is part of a business model. If it's sold, at least we should get something from this. So this is one point. The other point is, in this discussion, that it's about competitiveness in the ICT area, in the European common market compared to Asia and the US. So this means if you look behind it, the question is this a chance for Europe to build up business models which are competitive? And now we could use this chance of the discussion to build up these business models, and then we can put trust and other things into it. But basically, I think it's about this business model in the US and about competitiveness in the global world.
I quite support this view. I think this is not about making something more trustful, because that will be very difficult to define anyway. But business models that can provide competitive solutions, and they may be models that will be alternative to, say, American big providers, but they can also be models whereby we have this kind of solution in Norway, where a Norwegian cloud provider packs in an American cloud provider and delivers sort of a shield of trust, so security and a local adaptation, and sells this as a cloud service in the local market. So they actually earn money off their competitor, but in another setting. So there are different ways of doing that. And there is actually nothing really stopping companies to develop all kinds of different models and try to pitch them to European, both public agencies and enterprises. We can do on the government part to look into possible barriers in that we have maybe regulations that confine data to one particular location or something like that, if there is a political climate for that, of course, that we cannot assess from now. But on I don't think that there is anything to stop the European industry to develop competitive solutions for clouds in Europe.
Okay. About the let's get a little bit closer to the certification process. I mean, we have heard that you are providing certification. You are also providing already certification, have another logo or another sticker, or how does it work at your?
Well, it's not really a matter of sticker, is it?
Maybe for the people to understand.
Well, yeah, for
For
sure.
the awareness.
What I was trying to say is that a good point was made before, in a way that what is important is which standard you're making your assessment about. So what it has to be clear to anybody. Well, let's take a step back. The assumption is that a certification it will be a way, a tool for a potential user to make an informed decision based on trust, right? That's the idea. So for such a decision to be really informed, you need to have enough information about the overall certification process. You need to know how that certification could eventually map your requirements, what we were discussing before. So if the control that this certification is going to verify are mapping your requirement. What you need also, and Bern has made a point in there, you need something which is solid, which is of quality, which means that you need to have a strong chain of trust in between the overall scheme of the certification and the people who is going to make actually the assessment, which is as equally important as the quality of the framework you're going to use. And then the other important point, I guess, is the relevance to the scope. The relevance to the matter, in this case cloud computing, and the scope of the certification. Many has mentioned the unsuitability of ISO 27001 for the cloud case. I do believe that ISO 27001 has to be considered as the gold standard for security. It's not for nothing that is the most adopted certification scheme worldwide. We got about 18,000 certification companies certified against ISO 27001, which is not a small number. But yes, it has some limitations. So, and being one of these limitations, the lack of transparency. So you don't know exactly, for example, what's the scope of the certification. So you don't know exactly what the certification is covering. What we have tried to do, I think we managed to do with our certification process, which is something that we have developed not by ourselves, but it was rather like a work done with a working group, getting input from our members and from outside, and in collaboration with BSI, the British Standard Institution in this case. So the idea was to build on the good qualities of ISO and then move add what ISO was missing, so the cloud relevance and the transparency on what actually you're going to certify. But again, one key point to me is the transparency of the set of controls that you're going to use for the certification. This is something, you mentioned the word gold standard. Now, we are not going to create any gold standard. Nobody, will be able to create any gold standard. What is important, though, is that there is a standard, maybe a de facto standard, which is publicly available, that everybody can check and verify the suitability of that set of controls to meet its requirements. And if something is missing, because it's not eventually addressing a specific requirements for the German public administration, it's enough, to add what the control is missing. But also only with input from the all members of the community, you can create a gold standard or improve what already exists. Keeping control framework very secretive, it doesn't really help to transparency and to trust, I would say.
Should there be more harmonization in the realm of certification or setting standards in the EU? Should there be one provider or one, or maybe not one provider, but one set of rules, and then we have different providers for doing that?
Yes, in the context of products, we have harmonized standardization, certification process oriented to the common criteria. I think this also creates the possibility to compare products on the according to the security profile and the depth of evaluation. I think in future, and it is also a business to hand over the certificates. It's so, and it could be confusing if we have the 151 certificate and scheme, and so the interest is also to harmonize it. But we are at the beginning, and all we are testing. Also, we have a concept developed, and in the next year we will also first certificate a cloud computer service. It's the association of the assurance companies, the network there, and it is a combination of system-based elements and also product-based elements. But I think we are going in this field to certify, and important is that we have always a look what is doing internationally. But I think it's very useful, and the interest to get certificates is, especially also in the area of critical infrastructure, is very important. And here we are, in some sense, obliged to do something.
Becker, you want to add something?
I would like to refer to the activities of the European Commission in regards of the European Cloud Strategy. And I mean, talking about Cloud for Europe, that is one element of the European Cloud Strategy, but there are some, quite some more. And to my recognition, all these activities we are discussing here are at least covered with the activities by the Commission already, whether it is on, let's say, identifying relevant standards for the cloud, which is a task to ETSI, the European Telecommunication Standardization Institute, not to develop further new standards, as you said, but to look what is given and what can be used. I tell you that is a real challenge, and Daniela and myself are involved in that. That is really a challenge. They identified 108 use cases, different use cases, and then you need to match what standards are relevant or not. So that is really a big thing. On the other hand, if you talk about certification, there is another task with ENISA to identify relevant certification standards here for Europe. There is an activity on a code of conduct, which is also a very important thing. So, to my view, those measures are the right one. They are not completed yet, but they are aimed to be completed soon, and they are driving into the right direction. And what is relevant for the industry to a high degree is also relevant for public sector. Maybe not for 100%, but maybe with a coverage of whatever, 80% or more. So they can be taken into account as well.
Would it be a good idea if these code of conduct that you mentioned would be endorsed by the Article 29 working group or by national data protection authorities?
Well, I cannot speak for the Commission, but I think that is in mind. I see some, yes, thank you very much. So obviously that is on...
This is on track. Okay.
About the certification schemes and European level, we think it's a good idea to have some kind of common, if not certification, but accreditation system that could at least collect all these certification schemes that are deemed appropriate, and that there is one place we can go and see, okay, this certification scheme in this country is recognized at the European level. So if there is a company coming and saying we have a certificate from there, that would be very useful, and it makes it easier to assess the trust in a company. Yeah.
Just a very small statement. As Weber mentioned, we are working on this to put the things together, give recommendations. I just had a look the summary of certification schemes in Europe, and the recommendation paper for ENISA has nearly 50 pages. Yeah, so this shows where we're starting and where we have to converge to find the correct solution in the end.
Just a remark, it's 50 pages just because, I mean, there are like 35 annexes though. But going to your point, actually this is something that ENISA will be doing. So as a part of the task under the European Commission that Bernd was mentioning before, so ENISA will be publishing on the ENISA website the result of this activity with the name and the description of the suitable certification scheme. So from that side, it's already a good step for.
Well, another big issue at the moment for Europe is, of course, the new proposed data protection regulation. Do you think that this is bringing enough incentives for auditing and for auditing IT services and also for a reasonable level of privacy for the cloud? Whoever wants to go for that?
I get to my initial point in the beginning. I mean, we shouldn't be waiting for a new regulation before to try to get better security control in place, because it will, even though eventually the regulation will be approved before May, but then it will take some time more before it will enter into force in all the member states.
Well, it will be directly in the member states then.
Yes, but it's not going to be a transposition phase like with a directive, but still it has to be entered into force. So from what I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understand, it will take a couple of years after it will be passed into the European Parliament, which is not really tomorrow. Whenever it's going to be out there. There will be an extra for compliance, definitely. But again, we shouldn't be waiting for that legislation to come out. It's rather having a look into the principle of the new regulation, those pillars which are most likely not going to change. For example, the incident reporting that most likely is going to be there, and get prepared on how to get compliant for implementing an efficient incident reporting scheme for cloud.
Are there any questions from you? We already tried to do some aerobic at the start of the panel. Maybe you just would like to raise your hands if you have any question for our experts here to get a little bit more interactive. Please go ahead now. Are there any urgent needs? Yes, please. Oh, we have a microphone, and would you please state your institution?
Thank you. My name is Roger Dean, and I'm from EMA, and we're partners in the Cloud for Europe project. I think there's a big question about this position of, are the citizens worried about the security? I'm not sure they realize that the security involves the cloud, because they just think it's somewhere where their data's stored. And I think one of the big issues we've got is to create awareness and education. I wonder what the panel would think. Thank you.
Who wants to go?
Awareness raising is a tough subject. And after doing this for years now, I'm really pessimistic. Because the problem is, if you look at it, we have the cybersecurity months in Europe. But imagine how to get with associations and multiplicators 500 million people. We have awareness-raising material on the NISA website. We have posters. I see no other posters in the offices or here. The BSI has a website for citizens. I think in Germany, with 40 million PC users, internet users, the BSI might have 100,000 subscriptions. So this is something which shows the problem. I think the challenge with awareness raising, and I give to all of you a proposal, and then you will see that the question might be solvable. Just hands up. Who is from Germany? Okay. So in Germany, we have an automotive magazine from the ADAC. Every month published, you have crash tests in there. And if there's a crash test of a car, the people buy it if it's good, don't buy if it's bad. We need such kind of magazines or awareness raising in the same way for the IT business. That the people really look at it, and the problem is nobody really judges on security of products in this. So, and I think the question is really for all of us, how can we get these multiplications to awareness raising to our kids, to our staff, to our employees, and so on?
Well, I can follow on. Actually, it is my department in Norway that also does the work on, we call it digital awareness and digital competence, which also comprises data security and trust, because this is an inherent part of using the internet and the services on it. And we have to have a different approach to different groups. I mean, people who are employed by somebody, they get on-the-job training. But you have kids in schools and you have elder citizens, at least in my country it's a big group that uses the internet, and we want them to use the internet. And there is a bigger challenge, and especially because this is a moving target. This is not one thing that we can once inform about and then we are done. Because security threats are developing, new services are appearing, so you have all the time refresh this material and get to the groups in some way, in some channels. We are using a lot of non-governmental organizations, cooperations with them, voluntary organization who reach to these groups. But it's a tough job, and it needs both time, patience, and money on government's part. It does.
I would like to refer to a comparison. Once you mentioned the automotive sector, before you are allowed to run a car, you need to go for a driver's license, which is a minimum approval that you have, the minimum knowledge to operate a car and to act on the streets. That doesn't tell anything about in-depth knowledge. It is just the basics. Those basics are missing in the IT environment. What users know is what they learned by doing themselves, which is sometimes on a high quality level, sometimes very low. The risks you mentioned, you raised with your question, I would share it completely. I'm following with you. There are a lot of people in that, private people acting that way. Others are very reluctant. And what happens in the industry is that those services, those consumer services, free of charge, are transferred into the businesses, and once the IT department in a business does not go for cloud, they decide in their operational department to use it themselves. And then you build up a shadow IT, which is much more risky for the companies because compliance is not given, governance is not covered, and so on and so forth. So education is a key, and of course the policies in the company to solve that. And there, I think we have to look deeper into that field of training and education and personal certification.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there another question? Yeah, I guess we just take both questions here and then we go to the panel.
Good afternoon. I was not able to join the meeting in the morning because I was on OW2 meeting in Paris, and it's related to this question. How do you plan, or do you have an opinion how to help small and medium-sized companies, software companies, to be able to afford cost of certification schemes? Because of course it's very nice for big companies, it's affordable, but I think, and this is a result of our discussion in Paris, that will be quite difficult to spend even 20,000 euro for a small software apps provider, which has a nice application to be installed on the existing cloud infrastructure, yes, but for himself, he will not be able to pay just to have a certificate. Well, I'm coming from European Economic and Social Committee, Anna Nietyksza, Digital Agenda Group, and also president of Eurocloud Poland. Thank you.
Okay, we take the other question as well.
Yeah, thanks you very much. My name is Benjamin Brake. I'm working here for IBM and I'm doing governmental relations here in Berlin. I was very impressed, I must say, about the high level of differentiation of the panel debate here, especially by you, Mrs. de Brieses, because you pointed at the different aspects that when we talk about cloud and security and certification, we need to focus on whether or not this is a public cloud or it is a private sector cloud or is it only for end consumers. But then I must say, I didn't like the notion of that there are American companies and they have this kind of business model that they would like to make money out of a business model. I think this is kind of logical that people would like to make money out of a business model. So what I would like you to ask is, what I would like to stress is perhaps that when we differentiate a bit, we should also differentiate when we look at the American-based companies, pointing at that there are companies who are focusing on end consumers, but there are also companies who are doing business-to-business relations. That's another level of trustworthiness. That's another level of security, another level of data protection. So the thing is, I would like to beg you to also pay attention to this aspect. Thanks.
Okay, I guess this was more like a comment.
I take the later point and then you can. I'm of course of a completely other opinion, and I give you an example. 40 years ago, we had Boeing. It was after the Second World War, competitiveness in aircraft business. One point, it was not that the Europeans were sitting there and saying, "Oh, we don't trust this aircraft, it may fall down." It was an industry policy decision to say, we build an Airbus. And now what we have today is an Airbus on a large scale competitive to Boeing. And this is then fair competition. An airliner can buy Airbus or Boeing. And the only thing I want to say as a closing statement is, we need an Airbus in the IT industry for Europe, which might be in cloud computing.
Very good point. We will go on with this in the next panel, but just to finish the question with the costs and the SME.
Well, my answer, what we are offering is actually, the cost of the certification, it varies with the scope of the certification. So there is not a fixed price. So if you're a small company, therefore the scope of your certification is rather small, I would argue that your cost is going to be rather minimum as well. What is important, you mentioned that you are a SaaS company, which is building on a third-party infrastructure. So what is important is to include in certification scheme mechanism of inheritance in a way that if you are building on the top of a certified infrastructure, you're going to inherit the level of security that infrastructure is offering you, which means that, for example, if you use Atos that is sitting close to you, which has already a specific certification, then eventually, you can inherit for the infrastructure part that certification and cover only your part of the supply chain. Which again, if, as you say, is a rather small company, the scope of the certification is going to be rather small, and the cost consequently.
And the last word from Ms. de Brieses.
My apologies to American companies, even I expressed myself a bit unprecisely. What I meant is that, of course, no American company would go in a business model where they do not also earn money. So this is a kind of partnership I was really talking about, and that's a viable model. And especially, I think, to provide services for business-to-business applications. And that is one type of business model. Other type is that there are alternative solutions to American or Asian or Korean, whatever companies. Anyway, I think everybody agrees that competition is good for developing good services. And if there are viable business models that will deliver trustworthy services to public agencies or businesses, they need to be explored. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. We're going to change the panel right now, and we make a really very, very short break, just 3 minutes, because we are already behind schedule. So please be all back in 3 minutes.